I got asked a question, I believe it was earlier this week. It may have been at the end of last week, actually. One of my students asked what I thought, or just asked me to talk about what happened with Simone Biles at the Olympics. And we will be sending out the newsletter soon, and I wrote a blog about my thoughts on this, but I'm going to give the talk about this and kind of expound and expand on a couple of things. So the idea of mental strength as an integral part of peak physical performance, this should not be a new concept for anybody. You're going to let that person in the meeting, right, Tanya? And the way that I'm going to talk about it tonight is not going to be anything like mind-blowingly creative, different, crazy, but this is a super important concept for us in our martial arts practice and for everyday life. So I'm going to use Simone Biles as an example, one of several examples that I'll use. But if for those of you who didn't hear about this, you don't watch the Olympics, what's wrong with you? But she withdrew from, I believe, all of her events for this year after she had a really bad vault, and she didn't get injured on the vault, but she kind of landed poorly and stepped out, and you could tell like it was totally not normal for her as the best gymnast probably in the world right now. And from what you might have guessed just watching that and then see her immediately leave and go, you might have thought like, well, she just got, thrown off. She was disappointed by her performance. She gave up and quit. And while we can't see what's in her head, I'm going to assume that Simone Biles is not a quitter. Although we all, might think of ourselves as not being quitters, and it might happen one day. But from what I'm going to talk about later on, I'll kind of go more into that. But I'm pretty sure that's not what happened. I think what happened is exactly what she said. She was having an issue. She called it the spins, and I guess this is a common thing that happens with gymnasts where you're flying through the air, and if you've never watched a vault, specifically somebody really incredible at it, you can't even begin to comprehend. And even if you have watched it, I don't think that any of us can begin to comprehend. I get dizzy spinning around one time doing like one spinning kick, and they're like in the air on all different angles, spinning in an incredibly complex and presumably incredibly dangerous way, and then land on your 2 feet like that, and that's it, and like walk away from it. And this thing that would likely kill all of us if we tried to do it, and has actually killed some people in the past. So she had this bad vault. She said, I'm not in a good place to continue competing. She was worried for her ability to continue safely. And I believe that is what happened. She stepped out not just because she thought like, it's embarrassing, I messed up, I'm not going to win gold. It was like, I could get a career-ending injury from continuing in the Olympics. So she decided to leave. And there has been a lot said about this recently in the last few years with, I'm blanking on her name right now, the tennis player, who was it? Okay. Anyways, she withdrew from a couple of different competitions because of her mental health and feeling like the pressure to compete was too much. And other people talking about this kind of came out in support of Simone Biles. And you might look at this and think like, are athletes kind of getting weaker mentally? Are we kind of, teaching people to give up more quickly? And I don't think that this is the case. I think if you look, first of all, at what could have happened, so I mentioned other injuries that people have had in similar situations. Uh, most of you have probably seen Carrie Strug. I'm saying her name right. I saw it and I just could not remember how to spell her name. She did the vault, the same competition, on a broken leg. Broken ankle. She actually had her broken ankle and then she competed again. And you've probably seen this iconic, she lands on one foot essentially and finishes. And I believe that took Team USA to the overall gold. And it's a super inspiring, incredible story. But then when you take it apart and you look at it, and people have spoken up about this lately, it's like, she should probably not have done that, because she could have actually ended her career on that if it didn't go well. I am definitely not here to say, well, she shouldn't have done that, or this person should have done or shouldn't have done that. I am not on this level of physical performance and competition and pressure. None of us are. Probably nobody listening right now is. So it's really ridiculous to say, we can judge and say what this person should or shouldn't have done. But the facts are, people have been seriously injured doing this. There was another gymnast named Elena Mukina. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but she was practicing under pressure from her coach to practice this maneuver that she had said, I think I'm going to break my neck if I do this. And then he pressured her to do it. She did it in practice and landed on her chin and broke her neck. And she became quadriplegic after that. And so certainly there's always a high risk if you're doing something that is incredibly dangerous like this. And there are other activities that human beings do that make even vaulting in the Olympics seem like child's play, and other things are way more ridiculously dangerous. The risk is there, but that doesn't mean that, like, I signed up to be an athlete and no matter what happens, I'm just going to go for it and take the risk. And honestly, I'm on the side of, like, if you're not feeling it today, not necessarily in martial arts, although I would talk about this later on, but if you're not feeling it, you don't have to go up and perform. Simone Biles doesn't owe us anything. She's awesome. She gets paid a lot for her sponsorships. People love and adore her, fine. But, like, if she's not feeling it and she feels like it's either dangerous or she doesn't feel like doing it today, she doesn't have to. She doesn't owe us anything. She's not like a trained monkey that needs to go out there and perform. She is a human being who can make this decision and should. And when we kind of take for granted these people who are at the super high level and assume that they're always going to go out there and perform at this level, it's really, I think, kind of a misunderstanding or a not quite complete understanding of what is involved with this. All that being said, I want to talk about the kind of mental strength that is required to compete at a really high level and even to just do anything in life at a really high level. And these are two basic things that I'm going to say comprise mental strength that are really useful, specifically or especially when you're competing at a really high level, but also in anything else that we can do in life. So these skills or this one kind of ability, if you combine it all, of having this rock solid mental strength, this is something that every single high level athlete and performer has. This is not something that you can be at the very highest level without having. That is not the same as saying that everyone that has a super high physical skill level must have these things, although certainly these help. But there are plenty of people, way more people, that have the physical skill set to compete, but do not have the mental strength to actually have make a career out of it, to be able to compete in a consistent fashion, to be able to push through the difficulties and become a world champion level athlete, or to become the very best at what most of us do in life. To be the best in the world, you either get there and it lasts that long and you're done, or if you're there for any length of time, it means you have this mental strength. And you can point to times where incredibly gifted athletes, for example, Tiger Woods, like falls from grace, and you can say, well, I guess that means he wasn't really mentally strong. There's no way that he got to where he got without being incredibly mentally strong. Maybe he lost it. So he had his, he has his issues in personal life. He had his injuries, started to lose in competition. But that is, a lapse maybe in mental strength, or maybe he lost it at some point. You cannot be the best golfer in the world for like a decade or more without having incredible mental strength. It is when it cracks and when you kind of see through that veneer and recognize that these people are human. They make mistakes. They are imperfect. It is that actually should make us remember that actually what they've been able to do to be able to stay at that level and not, mess up is incredible. If any of us were put in the situation that most of these high-level athletes were put in, we would have just had to quit in the very first go. We would have never made it to that point. So when we put somebody, a human being, on a pedestal, and they stay there for long enough, and the pedestal keeps getting higher and higher, narrower and narrower, they will eventually fall off. It's impossible to stay at that level for so long without doing, making a mistake or without falling off because somebody finally gets better, or you just, get too old to do it. And that is not the case with all things, but in certain physical activities, you have to have the physical strength to go along with the mental strength too. So I think that the main difference between great athletes, the best amateur athletes, and professional athletes at the very highest level, world champion, it is just the mental aspect of it. And it might not even be that much of a difference with the mental strength. The ability to focus, the ability to be super determined and push through, there might only be a sliver of difference between people. But that is surely the difference, because the physicality of what happens is something that I think more people possess. This is my opinion. I'm not a sports scientist. I haven't studied this stuff, but it seems to fit with my experience in martial arts as well. So the first kind of aspect of mental strength that I want to talk about is determination. So again, to have a career that lasts very long, or to be able to be at a super high level at anything that we do for a long time, or even really for a short time, requires a lot of determination over years to get through the hurdles, to be able to meet the challenges and go through them, rather than, we succeed to a certain level. As soon as we hit the first hurdle, we fall, and then we quit, and we give up, and that's it. So determination to be able to push through over time, to be able to get through these challenges, to be able to come that great, is super necessary. And anybody who makes it to the Olympics or any high level sport like that has massive determination. You cannot practice and do what it takes to get there without having real determination. So you see people who come back, year after year, every Olympics they're back for 3, 4, 5 Olympics. It's absolutely insane to imagine what it takes to be able to continue at the high level and be able to go like that. I think to make it to 1 Olympics, the chances are incredibly against anybody. To make it to 2 or more is just crazy difficult. So if we think like they must not be determined, they gave up, they quit, whatever, that is not the case. It is much more likely that, in Simone Biles' case, like she decided this is going to be physically dangerous for me to compete, so I should step out at this point. The other side of it is focus. So this is like what we call in our practice mushin, or no mind. When you are competing or doing anything at the super high level where there is lots of pressure and attention, it is impossible to be able to compete or perform in the moment without focus, without amazing focus, without being able to put yourself in something like Mushin. So if you are, the example that I like to use for this is like you're an NBA player, you are standing on the free throw line, and it is the last shot that's going to determine who wins this game 7, this year's championship. Like, you've got millions of people watching you. You, in a normal year, have many thousands of people in the stands cheering or booing or distracting you or whatever. You've got the hopes of your entire team. You've got the hopes of all of your fans right here riding on you. And you have to be aware of this on some level. There's nobody who's just totally oblivious to all these factors, right? They step up to that line and they know somewhere in the back of their mind that this is what's going on. Yet, you also know that if they are actually thinking about that while they're shooting the ball, there's no chance. They don't have a prayer of making it. They're going to miss, because all of that distraction throws them off. So when the player, you've seen people, different players have different ways that they bounce the ball, or different things that they do right before they make the shot. What they're doing is actually their form of getting into Mushin. And in the action of the game, things are moving so fast. If you've sparred or you've grappled, or not, to a lesser degree, I guess, with the speed of it in push hands and Tai Chi. But if you've done this where you're really being pushed to perform, and it's like the only choice you have is to be in the moment, or you could get hurt or you fail, that might kind of make you rise to the occasion, but you're getting kind of in the flow of things there, right? When you're doing something where there's a pause in the action, and now I'm about to make this shot, I've got to be able to at will bring myself into this mental state, into this complete state of focus, to Mushin. And so they do a little ritual, and that makes it sound insignificant or small. I'm not trying to make fun of this at all. I think it's very useful, incredibly powerful, and important. So they'll bounce the ball in a certain way. They'll spin it in a certain way. I've seen one of my favorite players, and I cannot remember who it was. I'm sure it was a Piston, though, would bounce 1, 2, and then off to the side like this, and then shoot like this. And this is putting them in this state where they're focusing only on the way that they're moving the ball. They're focusing on their breath. They're focusing on the moment. And when they're able to do that, the only things that exist for them, presumably, is them, the ball, and the hoop, the basket. That's it. They're not hearing the fans. They're not thinking about all the pressure and how if they miss this shot, they're done. The game is over and it's embarrassing and everybody hates you for at least a time. They can't be thinking about any of that stuff, or they miss. Now, that's not to say that they successfully clear their minds every time. You see plenty of situations where a player will miss that shot, and it could be that they're just not very good at shooting free throws, but usually it's that the pressure got to them and they missed in that moment. This is, again, the difference between somebody who can make it. I promise you right now, I'm okay at basketball. I'm okay at shooting a free throw. I will not make 1 out of 100 shots in that situation unless I'm able to really bring my mind to a focused position and do that. And neither will any of you. To be able to clear the mind of all those distractions and let go of all the pressure and perform in that moment is incredibly difficult, and the focus is as close to complete and perfect as I think anyone will ever experience. So this is the kind of the two flavors, the two types of mental strength that you have to have. One is over time, the consistency, the ability to go through challenges and continue is determination. And then the momentary strength that's needed, the ability to focus your mind single-pointedly on what's at hand and let go of all other distractions and every other thought and every other concern. And these just happen to be two types of mental strength that are necessary to be great at meditation and great at martial arts. Which is why I'm talking about this, because it doesn't really matter to any of you what makes you great at basketball or gymnastics. You're not doing any of that stuff. But to be at the high level at anything that we do, and in our case, to be at the high level of martial arts and in meditation, these are the same two things that we want to really foster over time. Determination, because you're going to have bad meditations and you're going to show up to class and you're going to have bad classes. If you don't, you're inhuman and you're no student of mine, because it happens to everybody. You are going to have those bad days. And the only thing to do about that is to show up the next day and push through it, right? You can intellectually get yourself around it however you need to. You can trick yourself into showing up. You can recognize that this too shall pass. And when we have days that are like this, you got to know that we're going to have days like this next. But whatever you say to yourself, in order to get beyond it, you are just getting yourself to show up the next day. And when we create this chain, this unbroken chain of consistency with our practice, whether it be our physical practice or our mental practice, this is when we make real progress and where we really get somewhere. Now, you will likely have a broken chain at some point where you actually miss a practice, you miss a day. Let's say that you set out to meditate every single day in a year. This was your goal at the beginning of the year, and you miss a day. You either forgot or something so terrible happened, you're in the hospital and you could not meditate that day. Then the kind of championship mindset that we want to have here is to just let that go, essentially like it didn't happen, and then move into the next day like this is just the next day in an unbroken chain of meditation or practice. It's when we get attached to this idea that we never missed a day, and then we start to make excuses. Well, I missed a day. I guess that means that it's not happening this year. I'll just stop meditating, start again next year. I'll stop practicing this week. I didn't make it for my Monday class. My whole week is shot. I'll start again next week. Well, then I cannot stress enough how easily this turns into 1 week, turns into 2 weeks, turns into a month, turns into a year. And people all the time show up after being gone for a very long time and say, Sifu, I'm back. I know I haven't been here in 2 years. I've been meaning to come back ever since like a month after I stopped, but this thing happened, and then this thing happened, and then this thing happened. And okay, I finally realized that life was never going to be perfect, and I just got to do it. If I'm going to do it, it's going to be just by sheer force of will. I'm just going to show up to class and do it again. So it is the same with anything that is really worth taking on. Anything that is really going to transform us as human beings, or maybe transform us into whatever is beyond human being, is going to really take that determination. We must go on. And when we have a blip, when we have a hiccup in our practice, we treat it like that. If you have one hiccup, you don't spend the rest of your life thinking like, when is the next hiccup coming? Just let it go and move on to the next one. I've got a great story that I told in Tai Chi earlier this week, and it happened to one of our Tai Chi students who was walking down the boardwalk. She was on vacation in Seattle at Pike Place, walking down the boardwalk in a crowd of people, and there were people walking past her the other way. And this random stranger, just like not in his right mind, just took a swing at her, and she just went like, and kept walking. And when she described it, she said, like, I could tell that he wasn't really trying to start a fight. He just threw a punch. There wasn't even eye contact between us. And he kept walking that way, and I kept walking this way. And that's amazing, right? To be able to have that crazy thing happen and then to just keep going on almost as if it didn't happen. That really takes something. And it's not exactly the same as determination, but it should have the same kind of feel, right? When something gets thrown at us, we sometimes get hit by it. Sometimes we move right out of the way, but we no matter what happens, we have to just step up and keep going. Okay. When we falter, just like the absolute best athletes in the world, just like Simone Biles, you know, it is going to seem like a big deal for us if we've really built up a long time of having this kind of perfect string of practice. You know, we've been meditating every day for a year, and then we miss a day, and it can just seem earth-shattering for us. But we want to recognize that the way we got there was by having this strength. And just like the way that any super high-level athlete, or, you know, the people who are the best in the world at whatever it is they're doing, just like how they got there, they have the ability to get there again and to continue going. So when we have the blip, we don't want to let it throw us off completely. In the moment, we might recognize that our focus is just not here. Our laser sharp focus in this meditation might be gone. And in meditation, that should not mean, in most cases, that we get up and give up in that moment. It should usually mean that, okay, we stick it out, we meditate, we do the best that we can. Maybe we'll get our focus back, maybe we won't. But we don't want to get in the habit of giving up and quitting. That is distinct from you show up to class and you are just livid. It was the worst day that you can remember having in a long time, and you are frazzled, to say the least. Your body is just like tense, you're wound up, and your mind is racing, you know, 1,000 miles an hour, and you're just like attached to all the crap that happened to you earlier in that day. And you bow onto the mats and you're still kind of feeling it, but you're willing to try. And some days when you bow on the mats, most days I hope, you're able to let go of whatever happened earlier on in the day, right? Maybe that didn't happen when we do the bows in the meditation at the beginning of class. Maybe you let all that go and you're here in the present. Maybe that didn't work. Okay, so now I'm moving, and at least when I'm focusing on the way that I move my body, I'm focusing on my weight shift, I'm focusing on my breath. Now, at least then I can let it go, right? And that is going to be the case the vast majority of the times. Yet there will be times, maybe over years of practice, you know, you're bowing into spar and you're thinking to yourself, I am not in a good place to spar right now. I might hurt somebody else. I might get hurt myself. This is probably not the right thing for me to do. This is a bad decision. So if that is truly the case, and it's not just you standing across from somebody who you're like, I know they're about to embarrass me right now. It's like, I think that somebody's going to get hurt right now. If that is the case, you should communicate to your partner and either say, we got to go real slow, or this is not the right time for me to be practicing. I'm not in the right mental space. Please excuse me. And then come over and tell me, or whoever's teaching class, I can just tell that something's not going to go right now, so I should bow out of class. One of the things that we want to recognize, or one of the abilities that we want to be able to get is that. Recognize when you are not in the right mental state to continue. Recognize when you're not in the right physical state to continue, right? You really hurt yourself during a drill. You should be able to bow out, sit out, and say, I know that it's not a smart thing for me to continue in this class. Again, that is distinct from, I'm feeling lazy right now and I don't want to do it, so I'm going to make up something in my head, and maybe I convince myself, but it's not actually what's going on. But really, if we can recognize and really take the opportunities to take care of ourselves when they are needed, we should do that. And that will allow us to continue to practice for the amount of time that it takes to get really, truly great, and for the amount of time that it takes for us to transform ourselves and our lives. So with meditation, again, it is incredibly unlikely that you're going to find yourself in a dangerous place where you shouldn't meditate right now. I'm not saying it's impossible, but super unlikely. So during this meditation, There's going to be a sense of determination because your mind might lose focus and you need to come back to it. But the main thing you're dealing with right now after you have sat is focus. And we want the focus to be first like a filter that stops extraneous thoughts and distractions, whether they're physical sensations and sensory things, or they're just memories or things from the day. You want to have a very strong filter that stops those things from burrowing into your head and sticking there. We also want the ability to let go of those distractions immediately and come back to focus. So this is what we're going to be working on in this meditation tonight. But over the years of practice, there's also a very strong determination component that you want to make sure that you're working on as well. So sit comfortably.